The transport shuttle hummed quietly as it carried its cargo of new cadets toward the Galactic Defense Academy. Among the excited chatter and nervous laughter of alien species from across the galaxy, one figure sat in complete silence. Maya Chen pressed herself into the corner seat, her small frame barely filling the space designed for larger beings. Around her, towering Krillian warriors boasted about their homeworld's military victories. Their blue-scaled skin gleamed under the shuttle's lights as they flexed muscles that could crush steel. The insectoid Zephyrians clicked their mandibles in what passed for laughter, discussing battle tactics that had conquered entire star systems. Even the peaceful-looking Valdorians, with their crystalline features, spoke of their people's incredible psychic abilities that could move mountains. Maya pulled her standard-issue jacket tighter around herself. Humans were the newest species to join the Galactic Alliance, and their reputation preceded them in the worst possible way. Weak, fragile, short-lived. The other cadets didn't say it out loud, but she could see it in their eyes when they looked at her. Some showed pity, others barely disguised contempt. A few seemed genuinely puzzled about why humans had been accepted into the academy at all. The shuttle's intercom crackled to life. "Attention, cadets. We are approaching the Galactic Defense Academy. Please prepare for docking procedures." Through the viewports, Maya caught her first glimpse of the massive station floating in space. It was larger than Earth's moon, a sprawling complex of training facilities, simulation chambers, and residential quarters that housed the galaxy's finest military minds. As they disembarked, Maya found herself swept along in a tide of beings twice her size. The docking bay was enormous, designed to accommodate species of all shapes and sizes. Hover platforms carried luggage while automated systems sorted new arrivals into their respective housing units. Maya clutched her single bag, everything she owned in the galaxy, and tried to navigate the chaos. "Lost already, little human?" The voice belonged to a Krillian named Orcs, his blue scales rippling with what might have been amusement. His friends clustered around him, all towering over Maya like living mountains. "Maybe you should head back to whatever rock you came from. This place is for real warriors." Maya's face burned with embarrassment, but she kept walking. She had heard worse during the selection process on Earth. The military board had questioned whether humans belonged among the galactic elite. They pointed to humanity's short history of spaceflight, their relatively weak physical capabilities, their tendency toward emotional decision-making. But Maya had scored in the top percentile on every test they gave her. Strategy, tactics, problem-solving, stress management. On paper, she was academy material. The reality felt different. As orientation began, Maya found herself assigned to Squad 7, a mixed unit of 12 cadets from different species. Their instructor, Commander Thale, was a veteran Zephyrian whose chitinous armor bore the scars of countless battles. His compound eyes swept over the assembled cadets with calculated precision. "You are here because your species believes you represent their finest." Commander Thale's voice buzzed through the translation devices. "You will be tested in every way imaginable. Combat, strategy, leadership, survival. Most of you will fail. Some of you will break. A few might actually become the defenders this galaxy needs." The first weeks were brutal. Physical training pushed every cadet to their limits and beyond. Maya struggled to keep up during endurance runs designed for beings with far greater lung capacity. She barely managed the minimum requirements on strength tests calibrated for species that could bench press small vehicles. During combat drills, her human reflexes seemed sluggish compared to the lightning-fast Zephyrians or the rock-steady Valdorians. But Maya noticed things others missed. During tactical simulations, she observed patterns in enemy behavior that her squad mates overlooked. While they relied on brute force or overwhelming firepower, Maya found weaknesses in defensive positions, gaps in patrol routes, timing flaws in coordinated attacks. Her suggestions were usually dismissed by her squad leader, a Krillian named Vex who seemed to view Maya as dead weight. The first major test came during a survival exercise on the Academy's hostile environment deck. Squads were dropped into simulated alien worlds and forced to complete objectives while dealing with extreme conditions and hostile wildlife. Squad 7 drew the jungle scenario, a steaming nightmare of poisonous plants, predatory creatures, and maze-like terrain. Vex immediately took charge, ordering the squad to push straight through the jungle toward their objective. The Krillians used their natural strength to hack through vegetation, while the Zephyrians scouted ahead with their natural flight capabilities. Maya tried to point out signs of dangerous wildlife in the area, tracks and markings that suggested they were walking into a predator's territory, but Vex waved her off. The attack came without warning. Massive simulated creatures burst from the undergrowth, holographic predators programmed with realistic AI behaviors. The squad scattered as claws and fangs flashed around them. 2 cadets went down immediately, their biomonitors registering simulated injuries that would remove them from the exercise. Maya found herself separated from the others, crouched behind a fallen tree as one of the predators stalked nearby. Her heart hammered in her chest, but her mind was racing through everything she had learned about predator behavior. These creatures were programmed to hunt like real animals, which meant they had weaknesses, blind spots, predictable patterns. She waited until the creature turned away, then moved carefully through the undergrowth. Not toward the objective like the others, but toward higher ground where she could get a better view of the situation. From a rocky outcrop, Maya could see the entire jungle spread below her. Her squad mates were pinned down in 3 different locations, unable to coordinate their movements or mount an effective defense. But Maya saw something else. The predators were following specific patrol routes, leaving gaps in their coverage at regular intervals. There was a path through the jungle that would allow the squad to regroup and reach their objective safely. She just needed to get that information to them. Maya activated her comm unit, broadcasting on the emergency frequency that would reach all her squad mates simultaneously. Her voice was steady despite her racing pulse as she relayed coordinates and timing information. Vex, there's a clear path at coordinates 77 Mark 4. Move in 30 seconds when the patrol cycle's passed. Sierra, you can provide cover fire from the ridge line at 82 Mark 1. For a moment, there was silence on the comm. Then Vex's voice crackled back, grudging but focused. Copy that. All units follow the human's coordinates. The extraction went perfectly. Moving according to Maya's guidance, the squad regrouped, reached their objective, and completed the mission with no additional casualties. As they waited for pickup, Vex approached Maya with something that might have been respect in his alien features. How did you see all that? He asked. Maya shrugged, suddenly self-conscious again. I just watched. Paid attention to patterns. What she didn't mention was that this was how humans had survived on Earth for thousands of years. Not through superior strength or speed, but by observing, adapting, and finding solutions that others missed. In a galaxy full of warriors and psionics and technological marvels, humanity's greatest weapon was something much simpler. They noticed things. Word of Squad 7's successful survival exercise spread quickly through the academy. Other cadets began looking at Maya differently, though she wasn't sure if the change was entirely positive. Some seemed curious about the quiet human who had saved her squad. Others appeared resentful that someone they considered inferior had succeeded, where stronger, more experienced cadets had failed. The attention made Maya uncomfortable. She preferred working in the background, observing and analyzing rather than being the center of focus. But Commander Thale had other plans. During the next briefing, he announced that Squad 7 would be participating in the Academy's most challenging simulation, the Battle of Xerion Prime. The simulation recreated one of the galaxy's most famous military disasters. 50 years ago, an elite task force had attempted to retake the strategic world of Xerion Prime from an occupying enemy force. Despite overwhelming technological superiority and careful planning, the mission had ended in catastrophic failure. Since then, the simulation had been used to test the finest military minds in the galaxy. No cadet squad had ever successfully completed it. The scenario parameters are fixed, Commander Thale explained, his compound eyes reflecting the holographic display of Xerion Prime. You cannot change the initial conditions, the enemy force composition, or the available resources. Your task is to succeed where seasoned military professionals failed. You have 1 week to prepare. The squad gathered in their assigned strategy room, a circular chamber with holographic projectors that could display detailed tactical information. Vex immediately began outlining conventional assault strategies, drawing on his species' preference for direct confrontation. The Zephyrians suggested aerial superiority approaches, while the Valdorians proposed using their psychic abilities to coordinate perfect timing. Maya sat quietly in the corner, studying the historical records of the original battle. Something bothered her about the official reports, inconsistencies that didn't quite add up. The task force commanders had been experienced professionals with access to the best intelligence the Alliance could provide. Yet they had walked into what appeared to be a perfectly laid trap. The problem is the orbital defense platforms, Vex was saying, pointing to the holographic display. We need to neutralize them before landing our forces, but they're too heavily shielded for a direct assault. What if we split our fleet? Suggested Zira, one of the Zephyrians. Create multiple approach vectors to divide their fire. Maya finally spoke up. What if the defense platforms aren't the real problem? The room fell silent. Vex's blue scales darkened slightly, a sign of irritation. The historical analysis clearly shows that orbital defenses were the primary factor in the task force's defeat. That's what the reports say, Maya agreed. But look at the timing. The enemy knew exactly when and where the task force would arrive. They had prepared specific countermeasures for every tactic used. It's like they had access to Alliance battle plans. The suggestion hung in the air like an unwelcome revelation. Zira's antennae twitched nervously. Are you implying there was a traitor in the Alliance command structure? Maya pulled up additional data streams, cross-referencing communication logs with tactical deployments. During the original battle, Alliance forces reported equipment failures at critical moments. Navigation systems went offline just as they entered enemy engagement range. Communication arrays failed during coordinated maneuvers. Shield generators overloaded under less stress than they were designed to handle. She highlighted specific incidents on the holographic display. These weren't random failures. They followed a pattern. Someone with deep knowledge of Alliance technology and tactics was feeding information to the enemy. Vex leaned forward, his earlier dismissiveness replaced by genuine interest. Even if that's true, how does it help us? The simulation parameters are fixed. We can't change what happened in the original battle. Maya smiled, the first genuine expression of confidence her squad mates had seen from her. We can't change the past, but we can account for it. If there was a saboteur in the original task force, then the simulation includes that sabotage. We need to identify which systems will fail and when, then plan around those failures instead of trying to prevent them. The next several days were intense. Maya worked with the squad's technical specialist to analyze every system failure from the historical records. She created probability maps showing likely sabotage points and developed contingency plans for each scenario. The other squad members initially resisted her unconventional approach, but as the pattern became clearer, even the most skeptical began to see the logic. Instead of relying on orbital bombardment platforms that would mysteriously malfunction, they planned ground-based artillery positioned in unexpected locations. Rather than using the standard communication protocols that would be compromised, they developed backup systems using older, supposedly obsolete technology that a saboteur wouldn't think to target. Most importantly, Maya identified the likely identity of the saboteur within the simulated task force command structure. By analyzing communication patterns and access logs, she narrowed it down to 3 potential suspects. During the simulation, they would need to isolate these individuals from critical information while making them believe their sabotage was succeeding. The day of the simulation arrived. Squad 7 took their positions in the command center as the holographic recreation of Zerion Prime materialized around them. The fidelity was incredible. Maya could almost feel the artificial gravity of the flagship's bridge and smell the recycled air of the life support systems. Simulation commencing, announced the Academy's AI system. Historical parameters locked. Begin Operation Reclaim. The first phase went exactly as Maya had predicted. The task force dropped out of hyperspace at the predetermined coordinates, and enemy forces immediately began responding with uncanny precision. But instead of proceeding with the original battle plan, Squad 7 implemented their carefully prepared alternatives. When the orbital bombardment platforms suffered their predicted guidance failures, ground teams were already in position with backup artillery. When communication arrays went dark, older radio systems seamlessly took over. Enemy forces, programmed to respond to sabotaged Alliance systems, found themselves facing tactics they hadn't anticipated. The deception was crucial. Maya had identified Lieutenant Commander Reeves, a human officer in the original task force, as the most likely saboteur. In the simulation, she fed him false information about Squad 7's true objectives while using secure channels he didn't have access to for their real communications. The battle turned into a chess match between Maya's carefully laid plans and the enemy's programmed responses. Each time the simulation threw a historical disaster at them, Squad 7 was ready with an alternative that the original saboteur couldn't have compromised. The breakthrough came during the assault on the planetary capital. In the original battle, Alliance forces had been led into a trap in the city's underground tunnels. Maya's analysis suggested that Lieutenant Commander Reeves had provided detailed maps of Alliance approach routes to enemy forces. Instead of following the historical approach, Squad 7 used maintenance tunnels and service corridors that weren't on official Alliance maps. Maya had found references to these passages in civilian infrastructure records that a military saboteur wouldn't have thought to access. As Alliance forces emerged in the heart of the enemy command center, the simulation's AI paused. For several seconds, the holographic displays flickered as the system processed this unprecedented development. No cadet squad had ever reached this point in the Battle of Xerion Prime simulation. Simulation parameters exceeded, the AI announced. Victory conditions achieved. Mission successful. The holographic battlefield faded away, leaving Squad 7 standing in the plane command center. Around them, Academy instructors who had been monitoring the simulation stared in amazement. Commander Thale's compound eyes focused intently on Maya. "Cadet Chen," he said slowly, "report to my office immediately after debriefing." As her squad mates celebrated their unprecedented victory, Maya felt a mixture of pride and apprehension. She had proven that humans could think differently, see patterns that others missed, find solutions where conventional wisdom saw only inevitable failure, but she also knew that success often came with unexpected consequences. In the Academy's corridors, other cadets whispered about the quiet human who had solved the unsolvable simulation. Some looked at her with newfound respect. Others seemed troubled by the implications of her success. If a human could outthink the galaxy's finest military minds, what did that say about everything they thought they knew about warfare and strategy? Maya tried to ignore the attention and focus on her studies, but deep down, she knew that the Battle of Xerion Prime simulation was just the beginning. The real test would come when the Academy decided what to do with a cadet who thought too differently for her own good. Commander Thale's office was smaller than Maya had expected, but every surface displayed holographic medals, commendations, and battle records from conflicts across the galaxy. The Zephyrian commander gestured for Maya to sit in the chair across from his desk, his compound eyes studying her with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. "Cadet Chen," he began, his translated voice carrying an unusual tone. "In 30 years of military service, I have never seen a cadet solve the Xerion Prime scenario. More troubling, I have never seen anyone identify the sabotage angle that you uncovered." Maya shifted in her chair. "Sir, the evidence was all there in the historical records. I just looked at it differently." "Yes, you did." Commander Thale activated a holographic display showing Maya's analysis of the original battle. "Your conclusions about Lieutenant Commander Reeves were correct. That information remains classified at the highest levels of Alliance intelligence. How did a first-year cadet from a newly contacted species gain access to intelligence that seasoned analysts missed?" The question hung in the air like an accusation. Maya realized she was treading on dangerous ground. "I didn't access any classified information, sir. I only used the simulation databases and historical records available to all cadets." "Exactly." Commander Thale leaned forward. "Which means you saw connections that our intelligence professionals failed to identify for 50 years. This raises questions about human cognitive capabilities that the Alliance leadership finds concerning." Maya felt a chill run down her spine. "Concerning, sir." The commander activated another display, this one showing psychological profiles and test results. Humans consistently score in the middle ranges for most military aptitudes. Physical capabilities, reaction times, sensory perception, all average compared to other Alliance species. But in pattern recognition, strategic analysis, and what your people call thinking outside the box, humans consistently exceed expectations. He paused, watching Maya's reaction carefully. "Some members of the Alliance Council are beginning to wonder if humanity was accepted into the galactic community too quickly. There are suggestions that human cognitive processes might be fundamentally incompatible with established military doctrine." The implications were clear. Maya's success hadn't just proven human capability, it had raised fears about human unpredictability. In a military alliance built on standardized tactics and predictable responses, a species that thought differently represented a potential threat. "What happens now?" Maya asked quietly. "That depends on you." Commander Thaley stood and walked to the viewport showing the stars beyond the Academy. There are 3 options being discussed. First, humanity could be reassigned to non-combat roles within the Alliance. Research, logistics, support functions where your analytical abilities would be valuable but contained. Maya's hands clenched into fists. Her species had fought so hard for recognition as equals in the galactic community. To be relegated to support roles would be devastating for human pride and ambition. Second, the commander continued, humans could be restricted to specialized units under close supervision. Your people would serve as strategic advisors but never in independent command positions. And the third option? Commander Thale turned back to face her, his expression unreadable. Humanity could be asked to leave the Alliance entirely. Some council members believe that a species this unpredictable poses too great a risk to galactic security. The weight of representing her entire species settled on Maya's shoulders like a crushing burden. Everything humanity had worked toward, membership in the galactic community, access to advanced technology, protection under Alliance law, hung in the balance based on her performance at the Academy. There's going to be a demonstration, Commander Thale explained. The Alliance Council wants to observe human tactical thinking under controlled conditions. You'll participate in a series of war games against some of the galaxy's finest military units. The results will determine humanity's future in the Alliance. Maya left the commander's office with her mind racing. She had wanted to prove that humans belonged among the galactic elite, but her success had backfired spectacularly. Now she faced the impossible task of demonstrating human value, while somehow not being too different. Too unpredictable, too threatening. The news of the upcoming demonstration spread quickly through the Academy. Maya found herself even more isolated than before, as cadets from other species were warned not to discuss tactics or strategy with her. The few human cadets at the Academy looked at her with a mixture of hope and terror, knowing that their futures depended on her performance. Squad 7 was assigned to preparation duties, but Maya could feel the distance growing between herself and her teammates. Even Vex, who had grown to respect her abilities, seemed uncomfortable around her now. The easy camaraderie they had built during training evaporated under the pressure of species politics. Maya threw herself into research, studying every available record of the military units she would face. The Krillian Iron Guard were legendary for their disciplined formations and overwhelming firepower. The Valdorian Mind-Link Battalion could coordinate their actions with psychic precision. The Zephyrian Sky Dancers moved through 3-dimensional battlefields with unmatched speed and agility. Each unit represented hundreds of years of military tradition and tactical refinement. They were the best the galaxy had to offer, and Maya would be expected to defeat them using only standard Academy resources and whatever human cadets could be assembled into a makeshift unit. The pressure was crushing. Maya barely slept, spending her nights in the Academy's tactical simulation chambers, running scenarios and analyzing enemy patterns until her eyes burned from staring at holographic displays. She lost weight, her appetite disappearing under the stress of knowing that billions of humans were counting on her success. 3 days before the demonstration, Maya received an unexpected visitor. Admiral Sarah Chen, no relation despite the shared surname, was the highest-ranking human in Alliance military service. She had served with distinction in border conflicts and exploration missions, building the reputation that had earned humanity its place in the Academy. "Cadet Chen," the Admiral said as Maya snapped to attention, "I wanted to speak with you before the games begin." They walked together through the Academy's corridors, passing groups of alien cadets who stared openly at the two humans. Admiral Chen's presence commanded respect even from species that typically looked down on humanity. "I know the pressure you're under," the Admiral said quietly. "The weight of representing our entire species. I've been carrying that burden for years and I wouldn't wish it on anyone." Maya found her voice. "Ma'am, what if I fail? What if I prove that humans really are too unpredictable for the Alliance?" Admiral Chen stopped walking and turned to face Maya directly. "Then we'll deal with the consequences. But I want you to understand something important. The reason the Alliance fears human unpredictability is the same reason they need us." She gestured toward a viewing port, showing the vast expanse of space beyond the Academy. "This galaxy is full of threats that conventional military thinking can't handle. Rogue AI networks that adapt faster than standard countermeasures can respond. Ancient alien technologies that don't follow the rules we understand. Enemy species with completely alien psychology that renders traditional tactics useless. The Admiral's expression grew serious. The Alliance has been fighting the same wars the same way for thousands of years. They're very good at it, but they're not prepared for truly unexpected challenges. Humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology or our numbers. It's our ability to see problems from angles that no one else considers. Maya felt some of the pressure lift from her shoulders. So I shouldn't try to fight like them? Fight like a human, Admiral Chen said firmly. Show them what we can do when we stop trying to fit into their boxes and start thinking with the minds that evolved, on a world where the only way to survive was to be smarter than everything trying to kill us. As the Admiral walked away, Maya felt a shift in her perspective. She had been approaching the demonstration as a test to prove human worthiness according to alien standards. But perhaps the real test was to demonstrate why those standards weren't enough. The galaxy needed defenders who could think beyond conventional wisdom, who could find solutions where traditional military doctrine saw only impossible problems. Humanity's unpredictability wasn't a flaw to be corrected. It was a strength to be unleashed. Maya returned to her preparation with renewed focus. Instead of trying to emulate alien tactical thinking, she began developing strategies that leveraged uniquely human approaches to warfare. She studied Earth's military history, looking for examples of how human commanders had achieved victory against superior forces through unconventional thinking. The demonstration would be broadcast across the galaxy, watched by Alliance leaders and military professionals from every member species. Maya Chen, the quiet cadet who had wanted nothing more than to blend in, would stand before the galactic community and prove that humanity deserved its place among the stars. But first, she would have to win a war that everyone expected her to lose. The grand amphitheater of the Galactic Defense Academy had never hosted an event quite like this. Representatives from every major Alliance species filled the massive circular chamber, their various forms creating a rainbow of colors and shapes around the central holographic display. At the highest level of the amphitheater, the Alliance Council sat in their ceremonial robes, their faces grave with the weight of the decision they would make. Maya stood in the preparation chamber below the amphitheater floor, surrounded by the 12 human cadets who would serve as her command staff. They were the only humans at the academy besides herself, pulled from various training programs to participate in what everyone understood was a trial for their entire species. Remember, Maya addressed her makeshift team, we're not trying to prove we can fight like Krillians or think like Valdorians. We're here to show them what humans can do that nobody else can. The cadets nodded, though Maya could see the nervousness in their eyes. Marcus Williams, an engineering specialist from Mars, kept checking and rechecking his tablet displaying technical specifications. Sarah Park from the Luna colonies tapped her fingers in nervous rhythms while reviewing communication protocols. Each of them carried the same impossible burden that Maya felt, the future of humanity in their hands. A chime sounded, indicating the demonstration was about to begin. Maya took a deep breath and led her team onto the amphitheater floor. The scale of the chamber hit her immediately. Thousands of beings watched from the curved walls rising above them, representing civilizations that had existed for millennia before humans even discovered fire. Commander Thale's voice echoed through the chamber's acoustic systems. Today we evaluate the tactical capabilities of humanity through a series of combat simulations. Cadet Chen will command human forces against 3 elite units representing the finest military traditions in the galaxy. The holographic display materialized around them, showing a 3-dimensional battlefield floating in the center of the amphitheater. Maya and her team took their positions at the command interface, while their opponents appeared in separate sections of the display. First engagement, Commander Thale announced. The Krillian Iron Guard. Maya studied the holographic representation of her opponents. The Iron Guard was legendary throughout the galaxy for their disciplined formations and overwhelming firepower. 50 soldiers moved in perfect synchronization, their blue-scaled armor gleaming as they advanced across the simulated battlefield. They fought like a single organism, each warrior knowing exactly where every other member of their unit would be at any given moment. The scenario was a planetary assault, with human forces tasked to secure a heavily fortified enemy position. Standard Alliance doctrine called for orbital bombardment followed by ground assault, but Maya's human unit lacked the heavy weapons needed for such an approach. "They're expecting us to try a direct assault," Maya said to her team, studying the battlefield topology. "Look at their formation. Perfect for repelling frontal attacks. Strong overlapping fields of fire, mutual support positions." Marcus highlighted several points on the tactical display. Their strength is their coordination. Each soldier knows exactly what every other soldier will do. It makes them incredibly effective, but also predictable, Maya finished. They can't adapt quickly to completely unexpected situations because their entire doctrine is based on predetermined responses. Maya began issuing orders that would have horrified conventional military commanders. Instead of concentrating her forces for a coordinated assault, she scattered them across the battlefield in seemingly random positions. Rather than advancing toward the enemy stronghold, she had her units retreat and establish positions that appeared to serve no tactical purpose. The Krillian Iron Guard responded exactly as their training dictated. They maintained their disciplined formation and began a methodical advance to destroy the scattered human forces. Their coordination was flawless, each unit moving to eliminate what appeared to be isolated and vulnerable human positions. But Maya had positioned her forces based on a careful analysis of Krillian tactical doctrine. She knew exactly how they would respond to apparent chaos, and she was ready for it. As the Iron Guard advanced, they found themselves drawn into a three-dimensional maze that Maya had created using the battlefield's natural terrain. The trap sprang with surgical precision. Human forces that had appeared scattered and disorganized revealed themselves to be positioned for overlapping ambushes that caught the Krillian advance from multiple unexpected angles. The Iron Guard's disciplined formation, their greatest strength, became a liability as they couldn't adapt quickly enough to the constantly shifting threat vectors. Within minutes, the simulation registered a decisive human victory. The Krillian Iron Guard had been systematically dismantled by an enemy force that refused to fight. According to the rules they understood, murmurs rippled through the amphitheater as representatives from various species tried to process what they had witnessed. The Iron Guard had been defeated by tactics that appeared chaotic and disorganized but had clearly been planned with meticulous precision. "Second engagement," Commander Thale announced, his translated voice carrying a note of surprise. The Valdorian Mindlink Battalion. This was a completely different challenge. The Valdorians didn't rely on rigid formations or overwhelming firepower. Their psychic abilities allowed them to coordinate their actions with perfect timing and awareness. They could anticipate enemy movements, share sensory information instantly, and execute complex maneuvers that would be impossible for non-psychic species. Maya studied the new battlefield scenario, an urban environment with limited sight lines and multiple vertical levels. The Valdorians moved through the holographic city like flowing water, their crystalline forms adapting to every tactical situation with fluid grace. "They can read our intentions," Sarah observed, watching the enemy units respond to human movements with uncanny accuracy. "The moment we decide on a plan, they'll know about it." Maya nodded, but she was already formulating a solution. "Then we don't make plans. We make so many potential plans that their psychic abilities become useless." She began issuing rapid-fire orders that seemed to contradict each other. Units were told to prepare for multiple different objectives simultaneously. Equipment was distributed for various tactical scenarios. Most importantly, every human soldier was given explicit permission to improvise and adapt, their orders based on local conditions. The result was something that had never been seen in galactic warfare, a military force that operated without a unified tactical doctrine. Each human unit responded to the battlefield situation independently, making decisions based on training, instinct, and creativity rather than predetermined battle plans. The Valdorians' psychic coordination, their greatest advantage, became a source of confusion. They were receiving so many conflicting signals from the human forces that their shared consciousness was overwhelmed with contradictory information. Maya had created tactical chaos that even psychic abilities couldn't penetrate. Human forces moved through the urban battlefield like individual predators rather than a coordinated army. They adapted to obstacles with solutions that no central command could have predicted. A sniper team finding their position compromised didn't retreat to a fallback position. They improvised a new firing angle using building infrastructure. An assault squad blocked by heavy resistance didn't wait for support. They found an alternate route through maintenance tunnels. The Valdorians, for all their psychic abilities, couldn't predict actions that the humans themselves didn't know they would take until the moment arrived. Maya had weaponized human creativity and unpredictability, turning them from apparent weaknesses into decisive advantages. The second simulation ended with another human victory, achieved through methods that challenged everything the galaxy understood about military strategy. The amphitheater was no longer filled with polite murmurs. Heated discussions broke out among the various species representatives as they tried to understand what they were witnessing. Some seemed excited by the innovative tactics, while others appeared deeply disturbed by the implications. "Final engagement," Commander Thale announced, though his voice now carried unmistakable tension. "The Zephyrian Sky Dancers." Maya looked up at the holographic display showing her final opponents and felt a chill of uncertainty. The Sky Dancers were perhaps the most formidable military unit in the galaxy. They operated in 3 dimensions with unmatched speed and agility, striking from impossible angles and vanishing before their enemies could respond. Their aerial superiority was absolute, and they had never been defeated in combat simulation. The final battlefield was an open plain with minimal cover, designed to showcase the Sky Dancers' mobility advantages. Maya's human forces found themselves facing an enemy that could attack from any direction at any time, with no way to predict where the next assault would come from. As the simulation began, Maya realized she faced her greatest challenge yet. The Sky Dancers moved through the air like living missiles, their insectoid forms diving and weaving through space with impossible grace. Traditional ground-based tactics were useless against an enemy that could ignore terrain entirely. But as Maya watched their movement patterns, she began to see something that others had missed. The Sky Dancers' incredible aerial abilities came with a hidden weakness that would require uniquely human thinking to exploit. The fate of humanity's place in the galaxy would be decided in the next few minutes. Maya watched the Sky Dancers spiral through the holographic airspace above the simulated battlefield, their movements beautiful and deadly. Each Zephyrian warrior moved with perfect 3-dimensional awareness, their insectoid wings creating complex flight patterns that seemed impossible to predict or counter. They struck like lightning, appearing from unexpected angles to eliminate human positions before vanishing back into the sky. Her first instinct was to find cover, to dig in and try to weather the aerial assault. That's what every other species did when facing the Sky Dancers. But Maya forced herself to think differently. She studied their movement patterns, looking for the weakness she sensed was there. "They're too good," Marcus said, his voice tight with frustration as another human position fell to a diving attack. "They can hit us from anywhere, anytime. We can't even track them properly." Maya nodded absently, her mind working through the implications of what she was seeing. The Sky Dancers moved with absolute freedom through 3-dimensional space, but that freedom came with constraints that they might not even realize. "Sarah," Maya called to her communications specialist, "show me the atmospheric analysis of this battlefield." The holographic display shifted to show wind patterns, air density, and thermal layers in the simulated environment. Maya traced the movement patterns of the Sky Dancers against the atmospheric data, looking for correlations. "There," she said suddenly. "Look at their dive patterns. They're not random." Her team gathered around the display as Maya highlighted the Sky Dancers' flight paths. What had appeared to be chaotic aerial maneuvers revealed underlying structure when overlaid with atmospheric data. "They're using thermal updrafts and wind currents to conserve energy," Maya explained. "They have to. Flying in 3 dimensions at those speeds burns enormous amounts of energy. They've developed instinctive flight patterns that maximize efficiency." Marcus began to understand, which means their movements aren't actually unpredictable. They're following the most energy-efficient paths through the air. Maya nodded, her tactical mind racing ahead to the implications. "And if we can predict their flight paths, we can be waiting for them." But it wasn't enough to simply anticipate where the Sky Dancers would be. Maya needed a way to exploit their reliance on atmospheric conditions. Traditional anti-aircraft weapons were too slow and cumbersome to track such agile targets. She needed something else, something that had never been tried before. "We're going to change the weather," Maya announced. Her team stared at her in confusion. Controlling atmospheric conditions was far beyond the capabilities of a standard military unit. But Maya had been thinking like a human, not like a conventional military commander. "Marcus, how many thermal charges do we have in our equipment loadout?" Marcus checked his tablet. 12 standard thermal charges designed for breaching operations. And emergency smoke generators? 6 units meant for concealment during retreats. Maya smiled, the pieces of her plan falling into place. We're going to create our own weather system. Sarah, I need you to coordinate detonation timing down to the microsecond. We're going to disrupt the atmospheric patterns the Sky Dancers depend on. The plan was audacious beyond anything attempted in galactic military history. Maya positioned her thermal charges at strategic points across the battlefield, calculating their explosive force not for direct damage, but for atmospheric disruption. The smoke generators would be triggered in sequence to create artificial thermal barriers that would interfere with the Sky Dancers' instinctive flight patterns. This is insane, Sarah muttered as she programmed the detonation sequences. We're trying to fight aerial superiority with meteorology. Exactly, Maya replied. It's so insane that nobody's ever developed countermeasures for it. The Sky Dancers continued their devastating aerial attacks, unaware that the humans below were preparing to turn the very air against them. Maya waited until the Zephyrian formation entered a coordinated attack pattern, diving toward a concentration of human forces in perfect aerial synchronization. Execute, Maya commanded. The thermal charges detonated in sequence, creating sudden columns of superheated air that disrupted the careful atmospheric patterns the Sky Dancers relied on. Smoke generators activated, creating artificial thermal barriers that interfered with their natural flight instincts. In seconds, the orderly atmosphere became a chaotic maze of conflicting air currents and visual obstructions. The Sky Dancers, caught in the middle of their attack dive, found their perfectly coordinated formation scattered by unexpected turbulence. Their instinctive flight patterns, honed by millions of years of evolution, suddenly led them into atmospheric dead zones and thermal walls that their ancestors had never encountered. For the first time in their military history, the Sky Dancers were fighting blind. Their aerial superiority meant nothing when they couldn't trust the air itself. Maya's human forces, positioned based on her atmospheric analysis, were ready. As confused Sky Dancers struggled with the chaotic conditions, human soldiers opened fire from concealed positions. The legendary aerial warriors, masters of three-dimensional combat, found themselves vulnerable to attacks from enemies they couldn't see or predict. The battle turned into a series of individual engagements as the Sky Dancers' coordination collapsed. Some tried to climb above the disrupted air, only to find human forces with portable anti-aircraft weapons waiting at the thermal ceiling. Others attempted to land and fight on foot, abandoning their greatest advantage to escape the atmospheric chaos. Within minutes, the simulation registered a decisive human victory. The Sky Dancers, undefeated for centuries, had been brought down by an enemy that changed the rules of engagement in ways they couldn't adapt to. The grand amphitheater fell silent. The representatives of galactic civilization sat in stunned disbelief as they processed what they had witnessed. 3 elite military units representing the finest tactical traditions in the galaxy had been defeated by strategies that violated every principle of conventional warfare. Maya stood in the center of the holographic display, surrounded by the wreckage of atmospheric warfare she had created. Her human team looked exhausted but proud, knowing they had achieved something unprecedented in galactic military history. Commander Thale's compound eyes focused on Maya with an expression she couldn't read. Cadet Chen, please explain your tactical reasoning for the amphitheater. Maya took a deep breath, knowing that her words would be heard by representatives of every major civilization in the galaxy. Each enemy unit was defeated by their own strengths turned against them. The Iron Guard's coordination became predictability. The Mind Link Battalion's psychic awareness became information overload. The Sky Dancer's aerial mastery became dependence on atmospheric conditions. She paused, looking up at the thousands of alien beings watching her. Human military doctrine isn't about being stronger or faster or more psychic than our enemies. It's about seeing problems from angles that nobody else considers, finding solutions that work not because they're the best solutions, but because they're the only solutions nobody saw coming. Murmurs rippled through the amphitheater as species representatives discussed the implications among themselves. Maya could see confusion, admiration, fear, and excitement in the various alien faces around her. One of the Alliance Council members, an elderly Valdorian with crystalline features that sparkled under the amphitheater lights, rose from his ceremonial seat. The demonstrations are concluded. The Council will convene to discuss our findings. As the representatives filed out of the amphitheater, Maya remained standing in the center of the holographic display. She had done everything she could to prove humanity's value to the galactic community. Now she could only wait to learn whether her unprecedented victories had saved her species' place among the stars or convinced the galaxy that humans were too dangerous to trust. The quiet cadet, who had wanted nothing more than to blend in, had instead become the most visible human in galactic history. The fate of humanity now rested in the hands of alien leaders who would decide whether human unpredictability was an asset worth keeping or a threat too great to tolerate. Maya looked up at the empty amphitheater and wondered if she had just saved her species or doomed it. The council chambers deep within the Academy station hummed with tension as representatives from across the galaxy debated humanity's future. Maya and her team had been dismissed to quarters while the Alliance leadership deliberated, but sleep was impossible. Through the viewport in her small room, Maya could see the ships of various member species maintaining their positions around the Academy, waiting for a decision that would reshape the galactic order. 3 days passed without word. Maya spent the time in the Academy's libraries, researching the history of species integration into the Alliance. Some civilizations had been welcomed immediately based on their obvious strengths. Others had faced skepticism, but gradually earned acceptance through demonstrated value. A few had been rejected entirely, deemed incompatible with galactic civilization. The pattern was always the same. Species that fit existing paradigms were accepted. Those that challenged fundamental assumptions about civilization, warfare, or cooperation were viewed as threats to be contained or eliminated. On the 4th day, Commander Thale appeared at Maya's quarters with an expression she couldn't interpret. "Cadet Chen, you're requested in the council chambers immediately." The walk through the Academy's corridors felt endless. Maya passed groups of cadets from various species, some offering encouraging nods while others watched with undisguised suspicion. The demonstrations had been broadcast across the galaxy, and everyone knew that the quiet human cadet now carried the fate of her entire species. The council chambers were smaller than Maya had expected, a circular room with representatives seated around a holographic display showing star charts and demographic data. At the center of the room stood Admiral Chen, her face carefully neutral as she waited beside the council's decision podium. The senior council member, the elderly Valdorian whose crystalline features had presided over the demonstrations, rose to address the assembly. "We have reached our decision regarding humanity's continued participation in the Galactic Alliance." Maya's heart hammered as she took her position beside Admiral Chen, the weight of billions of human lives pressed down on her shoulders. "The demonstrations have revealed capabilities that were not apparent during humanity's initial evaluation," the Valdorian continued. "Human tactical thinking operates according to principles that challenge established military doctrine across the galaxy." A pause that felt like an eternity. However, this challenge may be precisely what the Alliance requires. Maya felt a spark of hope, but the council member's next words tempered her optimism. Recent intelligence reports indicate emerging threats that conventional military responses have proven inadequate to address. Rogue artificial intelligence networks operating beyond the outer rim. Ancient alien artifacts with defensive systems that adapt to standard attack patterns. Enemy species with completely alien psychology that renders traditional diplomatic and military approaches useless. The holographic display shifted to show star charts marking various crisis points across the galaxy. Red zones indicated areas where Alliance forces had encountered problems that defied conventional solutions. In each case, our finest military units have been defeated by enemies that operate outside established tactical paradigms. The Krillian Iron Guard was decimated by an AI network that learned their coordination patterns. The Valdorian Mind Link Battalion was neutralized by ancient defenses that somehow blocked psychic communication. The Zephyrian Sky Dancers were grounded by environmental weapons that disrupted atmospheric flight entirely. Maya realized with growing amazement that the Council wasn't just describing hypothetical threats. These were real conflicts where the galaxy's elite forces had faced the same kind of unconventional challenges she had created in simulation. The demonstrations suggest that human tactical thinking may be uniquely suited to address challenges that conventional military doctrine cannot handle, the Valdorian explained. Your species appears capable of developing solutions that other civilizations would never consider. Another council member, a massive Krillian with battle-scarred blue scales, rose to speak. However, this same unpredictability raises legitimate concerns about humanity's reliability as an alliance partner. How can we coordinate with allies whose tactical decisions cannot be predicted or understood, using established military principles? The question hung in the air like a sword over Maya's head. It was the core of the galaxy's fear about humanity. Not that they were weak, but that they were incomprehensible. Admiral Chen stepped forward. Council members, humanity requests the opportunity to address these concerns through practical demonstration rather than theoretical debate. The Valdorian's crystalline features shifted in what might have been curiosity. Explain. Assign human units to the crisis zones you've identified, Admiral Chen proposed. Let us prove that human tactical thinking can solve problems that conventional approaches cannot address. If we succeed, humanity earns its place through demonstrated value. If we fail, the Alliance loses nothing but a few unconventional soldiers. Maya watched the council members exchange glances and brief communications in their various languages. The proposal was elegant in its simplicity. Let results speak louder than fears. The council will consider this proposal, the Valdorian announced. But first we must address a more immediate concern. The holographic display shifted to show intelligence reports marked with the highest security classifications. Maya caught glimpses of enemy ship designs unlike anything in the Alliance database, weapon signatures that violated known physics, and tactical analyses that concluded with recommendations for evacuation rather than engagement. 6 months ago, long-range scouts detected an approaching threat that surpasses anything in our historical records. The Valdorian explained. An enemy force of unknown origin and capability is advancing toward Alliance space. Every tactical simulation suggests that conventional military responses will prove inadequate. The council members' next words sent chills through the chamber. We need solutions that no one has tried before. Strategies that operate outside all established military doctrine. The demonstration suggests that humanity may be the only species capable of developing such approaches. Maya felt the weight of galactic civilization settling on her shoulders. The Alliance wasn't just accepting humanity as members, they were betting everything on human unpredictability to save them from an enemy that conventional thinking couldn't defeat. Cadet, Chen, the Valdorian addressed her directly. You will be commissioned as a lieutenant in the Alliance Defense Force and assigned to the Unconventional Warfare Division. Your mission is to develop tactical solutions for threats that conventional military thinking cannot address. Maya snapped to attention, her voice steady despite her racing pulse. Understood, sir. What are my operational parameters? There are none, the Valdorian replied. You have unlimited access to Alliance resources and personnel. Your only constraint is that your solutions must work against enemies that have proven immune to conventional tactics. As the council session concluded, Maya found herself surrounded by representatives from various species, each offering resources and personnel for her new command. The same aliens who had viewed humanity with suspicion were now eager to support any solution that might protect them from the approaching threat. Admiral Chen placed a hand on Maya's shoulder as they left the council chambers. Congratulations, Lieutenant. You've not only saved humanity's place in the Alliance, you've made us indispensable. Maya looked out through the viewports at the vast expanse of space beyond the Academy, knowing that somewhere in that darkness, an enemy was approaching that would test every unconventional solution she could devise. The quiet cadet who had wanted nothing more than to blend in had become the galaxy's last hope against threats that defied all conventional understanding. Maya Chen, the human who saw patterns that others missed, would now have to save an entire civilization using the very unpredictability that had once made them fear her. As she walked toward her new assignment, Maya smiled quietly. The galaxy had finally learned what humans had always known. Sometimes the best solution was the one nobody saw coming. And if there was one thing humans excelled at, it was finding solutions that no one else would ever think to try. The quiet cadet was ready to show the galaxy just how loud human ingenuity could be when it really mattered.